Greetings. In this video, we are going to look into the word-to-word meaning and commentary on Durga Suktam. So the Durga Suktam is a compilation of verses that mainly denotes Agni. It is found in the Mahanarayana Upanishad of the Krishna Yajur Veda. However, you can find individual verses that come along Durga Suktam in other portions of the Vedas as well. So before going in, we should get into the genesis of the Vedas, since Durga Suktam is verily a part of the Vedas. So the entire universe is a reverberation, and when there is reverberation, there is sound energy. In other words, the entire cosmos is simply a manifestation of sound energy. The ancient Vedic sages, through their penance, activated non-mechanical parts of their brains which enabled them to download cosmic data directly. They received the cosmic truths in the form of sounds and sight. They literally heard and saw these sounds which represent the cosmic truths. These truths were recited as received and passed on generations after generations. Various truths downloaded by the various rishis that walked this planet gave rise to the ocean of Vedas. Veda Vyasa later compiled these Vedas and classified them. This is how the Vedas came to existence. Each of the four Vedas had many branches, and each branch had four components: the Samhita, the Brahmana, the Aranyaka, and the Upanishad. The Samhita refers to the mantric hymns, the Brahmana refers to the application of the Samhita, the Aranyaka refers to the portion of the Vedas which was exclusively learned in the forest regions, and Upanishads serve as an essence to the Vedic truths, an essence to the Vedas itself. The first two verses of the Durga Suktam are found in the Rig Veda Samhita. It is found in the first mandala, the 99th Sukta of the Rig Veda Samhita. The Rishi who downloaded these two verses of the Durga Suktam is Kashyapa Maricha. The other verses of the Sukta appear in the Mahanarayana Upanishad, and their rishis remain unknown. Now, there may be some of the verses which might appear in other parts of the Vedas as well, which I am not very sure. I would give an update in the comment section if I find any. So the first verse of Durga Suktam: Om Jata Vedase Sunavama Soma Marati Yato Nidahati Vedaha. So Jata means born, Veda in reference to the Vedas. So Jata Vedase refers to one from which the Vedas are born from. It actually refers to Lord Agni. Sunavama, which means may we extract juice by pressing. Somam, in reference to the soma juice. The soma juice is a Vedic juice prepared by pressing the stalks of a particular plant. It has a bliss-inducing property. Rati, which means giving. So rati means not giving. Yataha, which means wherefrom. Ni, which means nija, which means near and within. Dahati, which means to burn, and Vedaha, which means Vedas, the eternal knowledge. So the meaning and commentary of this verse, the first verse of Durga Suktam: we press the soma juice for Jata Veda, which is very unyielding. It burns off our ignorance, which enlightens us with eternal knowledge. Soma here is equated to the state of Godhood, which is full of bliss. When you are in oneness with the state of divinity, you experience extreme bliss. Like pressing the plant to extract Soma, we ardently invoke Jata Veda to experience the state of bliss through Godhood. The invocation of this Jata Veda, who is verily Agni. Jata Veda is another name for Lord Agni. So through the invocation of this Jata Veda mentioned, we burn all forms of ignorance. When all ignorance is burnt, we attain enlightenment. And that state of enlightenment attained is the state of extreme pure bliss, represented by Soma. Verse number 2. Sanaf parushadati durgaani vishwanaveva sindhunduritatyagnihi. Saha, which means he. Naha, which means us. parsHat, which means carry us. Ati, which means extreme. durgaani comes from duhu, which means very difficult, and gaha, which means to go across. So durgaani itself means something which is very difficult to approach. Vishwa, which means the cosmos. Nava plus iva. Nava means boat and iva means alike. So boat alike. Sindhum, which means the ocean. Durita comes from duhu, which means difficult, and ita, which means to move across. Ati, which means extreme. Agnihi, which means the Lord of Fire, Lord Agni. Meaning and commentary. Agni boats us across the ocean of illusion and suffering, which is extremely difficult to cross. Fire is the element which actually connects us to God. This is why the element of fire is prominently used in many cultures across the globe. For example, Saint Vallalar attained enlightenment when he fixed his gaze on the arati done in Chidambaram temple. Lord Agni, like a boatman, ferries us towards enlightenment. Even today, followers of Saint Vallalar refer to fire as the eternal power. Next verse. Tam Agni varnan tapasa jvalantim vairojanim karma phaleshu jushtaam. Tam, which means that, but this is in reference to a feminine aspect. Agni varnam, fire colored. Tapasa, by tapas, intense sadhana which is very fiery. Jvalantim, which means to shine. Vairochanim, which means shining through various manifestations. Karma phaleshu, which means by the means of karma phalas, the fruits of our action. Juhtam, which means to be pleased. So meaning and commentary of this verse, to her who is the very color of fire, who blazes with tapas, who shines in various manifestations, she is the one to be pleased through the fruits of our action. Now, tapas comes from the root word tapta, which means heat, literally heat. It is the very manifestation of fire. Tapas, penance which we refer to as tapas, is actually intensity. Intensity is the very form of Agni. The fruits that bear as a result of our tapas manifest in many dimensions which unlock many doors through which infinite grace pours upon us. With the divine grace being abundant, enlightenment is just a stone away. That is what this verse means. Next verse. Durgaan devigam sharaNam prapadye sutarasitarase namaha. Durgam devim. Durga comes from two words, duhu, which means very difficult, and gaha, which means to go. So Durga literally means something which is very difficult to approach. Devim is the feminine version of Deva. Deva itself comes from the root div, which means to shine. So literally one who shines, and a being of enlightenment. A divine being or a divine entity, a divine personality. This is how we get Durga Devi. Devi or Deva does not mean demigod as what many modern translations show. That is false. sharaNam, which means shelter. Aham, which means I. Prapadye, which means by falling at her feet. Sutarasi, which comes from Su, which is Sushtu, which means excellent, and Tarasi means swimmer, and Sutarasi means excellent swimmer. Tarasi, which means to the swimmer. Namaha comes from two sounds, na, which means not, and maha, which means me. So namaha means not me. The word namaha dissolves our identity. It affirms that we are not the mind or body as we perceive, but pure consciousness. That is why we say not me. This is not me. When we say namaha and invoke a deity, we establish in the state of that particular deity. So the meaning and commentary of this verse, O Durga Devi, I take refuge by falling at your feet. As an excellent swimmer, ferry me across the ocean of illusion towards enlightenment. We empty ourselves by the utterance of namaha, which means not me. As an empty cup, we invoke Mother Durga with complete surrender on her feet. Empty and open, we now enable her to gush towards us. She, being an excellent swimmer, so as to say, shall effortlessly board us across the ocean of illusion. The ocean of illusion is the materialistic world we live in. We experience ourselves as individual waves. We cognize ourselves as individuals comprising the body and mind. Mother Durga here ferries us across this ocean and presents the truth that we are verily the ocean itself. We are Atma, we are God. You are God, I am God. Everyone is God, everything is consciousness. I am not the body or mind, I am consciousness. This is the state of enlightenment. Next verse. Agni tvam paarayaa navyo asman swasti bhirati durgaani vishva. Agni in reference to Agni. Tvam, which means you. Paarayaa, which means take across to the other shore. Navyaha, which means worthy of praise. Asman, which means us. Swasti bhihi, which means excellent way. Ati, which means extreme. Durgaani comes from duhu, and gaha, which means very difficult to approach. Vishwa, which means everything. So meaning and commentary, O Agni, you are worthy of praise. Take us in the most excellent way across the world of illusion which is very difficult to cross. Now this is why Agni is revered in our culture very much. Agni is the element which can link us to the divine dimension as mentioned earlier. Our ancients who realized this gifted us the signs of Arati, Yajna, Agnihotra and so forth. Why even you find this reverence in many other religions. For example, the primary form of worship in Zoroastrianism is that of fire. Next verse. Pushcha prithvi bahulana urvi bhavato kayatanaya yashanyoho. Puhu, Puri, which means this city or body. Cha, which means end. Prithvi, which means earth. Bahula, which means abundance. Naha, which means us. Urvi, which means vast. Bhava, which means to become. Tokaya, which means for our children. Tanayaya, which means dear children. Shanyyoho, which actually comes from Shamyoho, but Shamyoho is pronounced as Shanyyoho due to the Sandhi rule, which means happiness. So meaning and commentary, also spread your vast auspiciousness over Mother Earth so that she becomes abundantly fertile and fills her children with happiness. Now what this verse means is that, see, Vedas are recited in a yajna. In English we call it the fire sacrifice, although that term is not really something very appropriate. So the auspicious items which we offer to Agni in a yajna produces copious amount of smoke. You might have seen this. And this copious amount of smoke actually carries the vibrations, the essence of the Vedas which are recited. These smoke disperse and travel vastly because it's of a gas property, and they carry forth the vibrations of the Vedas everywhere. Further, the smoke rises high and mixes with the rain clouds. The water droplets in the clouds are energized by these vibrations, and during a downpour, these energized raindrops purify the land. Literally every drop of rain contains the power of the Vedas. The auspicious rainwater nourishes the crops which are consumed by people. In a nutshell, the potency of the Vedas are directly embedded on every being as in the children of Mother Earth, through the power of Lord Agni, who is the driving force of a yajna. Next verse. Vishwani no durgaha jatavedas sindhunna nava duritati parshi. Vishwani, which means everything, naha, which means us, durgaha, which means destroyer of difficulties, jata vedaha, which means from whom the Vedas are born, sindhum, which means ocean, naha, which means us, nava, which means by boat, durita, which means it comes from duhu, plus ita, which means difficult to go across, ati, which means extremely, parshi, which means to protect. So meaning and commentary of this verse, O Jata Veda, you are the destroyer of difficulties. Like a boat who protects us from the ocean of illusion, you take us across towards enlightenment. So again, this verse is similar to what we have seen previously, describing the role of Agni as a boatman who ferries us towards enlightenment. Next verse. Agni atrivan manasa grunano osmakam bodhyavita tanunam. Agni, which means Agni, Atri vat, which means just like the Rishi Atri. Manasa, which means with the mind. Grunanaha, which means mentally repeating. Asmakam, which means our. Bodhi, which means wisdom. Avita, which means who protects. Tanunam, which means our self, our being. So meaning and commentary of this verse, O Agni, protect our being, make us wise, mindful and aware just like Sage Atri. Sage Atri was constantly imbibing the Vedic mantras. Likewise, when we become mindful and attain oneness with the Vedas, which are in the form of mantras, we are safeguarded by Agni. Next verse. Pritanajitagum sahamana mugram agnigum huvema paramat sadhasthat. Pritana, which means battalion, jitam, which means winner, sahamanam, which means conquering and victorious, ugram, which means ferocious, agnim, which means Agni, huvema, it is also hava mahe, which means we remember and call upon, we invoke, so as to say. Paramat, which means of the highest degree. Sadhasthat, which means from the assembly. So meaning and commentary of this verse, we invoke and call upon Agni, who is all conquering and victorious, who is the winner of the battalions, who is ferocious from the highest degree of assembly. Next verse. Son of Parushadati durgaAni vishvakshamat devo ati duritatyagnihi. Saha, which means he, naha, which means us, parsHat, which means to float and carry us across, ati, which means extreme, durgaAni, which means difficulties. Next verse. Vishwa, which means everything, kshamat, which means temporary, something which is bound to perish, devaha, which has been explained earlier, ati explained earlier, durita explained earlier, ati again explained earlier, agnihi also explained earlier. So meaning and commentary, he, in reference to Lord Agni, keeps us afloat and carries us across the extremely difficult to cross ocean of illusion, which is temporary, towards enlightenment. So it is Agni who keeps us afloat from illusion. Illusion in the sense that deviation from the cognition and realization that we are verily Atma and identifying ourselves with the body and mind. So it is Agni who carries us from this unreal world, the world which is constantly changing, not permanent. The only permanent entity is your consciousness. So it is Agni who carries us from this unreal world. It is Agni who enables us to get enlightened. Next verse. Pratnoshikamityo advareshu sanachaho tanavyascha satsi. Pratnoshi is also pratanoshi, which means to expand and spread. Kam, which means bliss. Id yaha, which means by our invocations. Advareshu, in the advaraha, which means the yajna, the Vedic ritual for sacrifice as mentioned earlier. Sanat, which means ancient, cha, which means end, hota, which means the priest of a yajna, the person who does the sacrifice, who conducts a yajna, navyaha, which means new, cha, which means end, satsi, which means to sit. Meaning and commentary. O Agni, sit in our fire sacrifice, our yajnas, and expand the bliss generated by the ancient yajna conducted by the new sacrifices. See, the Vedas are represented by the yajna, are as ancient as the sun and as fresh as the sunrise. The Vedas are eternal. Now, Agni is the driving force of a yajna. As explained earlier, Agni enables the potency of the Vedas to be expanded throughout the planet in the form of a yajna. The very experience of the Vedas is bliss, and bliss is the state of godhood. So by conducting a yajna, we actually spread the state of godhood, the state of bliss throughout the planet. Why planet? Even the cosmos. Next verse. Svancha agne tanuvam piprayasvasmabhyancha saubhagamaya. Swam, which means your own, cha, which means end, agne, which means Agni, tanuvam, which means body, piprayasva, which means to satiate and quench thirst, asmabhyam, which means ours, cha, which means end, sau plus bhagam, which means good fortune, a plus yajasva, which means to make it happen. Meaning and commentary. O Agni, quench your own thirst and ours too. Thus do we invoke you and attain good fortune. In this verse, Agni in a yajna is quenched by the offerings of herbs and other auspicious items. As Agni's thirst to burn is quenched, so as to put it figuratively, in a yajna, so is ours. When we conduct a yajna and put offerings into the fire, we are blessed with good fortune. Now, as per the tradition, as per the Shastras, when we pour 1 can of ghee into the yajna, the world begets 100 cans of ghee. This is how it works. A yajna is of a different dimension and it has deep science in it. A yajna is an elaborate technology through which we can communicate with the deities directly. Whatever we offer into the fire is directly delivered to the specific deity invoked. Next verse. Go bhirjushtamayujo nishiktantave endra vishnoranu sancharema. Go bhihi, which means with cattle, jushtam, which means joined, yujaha, which means not joined, ni shiktam, which means flooded, tava, which means your, Indraha, which represents Lord Indra, who is the god who represents mastery over the senses. vishNoho, which means in reference to Lord Vishnu, Lord Vishnu represents the state of being all pervasive, all pervasiveness. Anu sancharema, which means may we follow. So meaning and commentary, with mastery over the senses, represented by Indra, we become unattached to the illusionary world. May we follow you, O Lord Agni, to establish ourselves in the state of all pervasiveness. Indra is the master of senses. Indra denotes the state in which mastery of the senses is attained. Vishnu refers to that which is all pervasive. Atma is all pervasive. The state of enlightenment is all pervasiveness. We realize that we are the same consciousness which presides everything. So by attaining mastery over the senses, we get led by Agni towards the state of enlightenment, in which we experience all pervasiveness. So it's a link, in short, from Indra to Vishnu through Agni. Next verse. Nakasya prishtamabhi samvasano vaishnavil loka iha maadayantaam. Nakasya, which means the highest heaven. Prishtam, which means on the top. Abhi, which means all pervading. Samvasanaha, which means all pervasive. Vaishnavim, which means of Vishnu, which means all pervasiveness. Loka, which means a world. No proper English translation, but what we generally refer to as loka, right? Iha, which means here. Maadayantaam, which means may delight. So Vaishnavim, all pervasive state in feminine form. That is Vaishnavim, who resides in the topmost heaven, delight us by completing us in this world. So the state of all pervasiveness is of the highest heaven, the ultimate state of bliss. We can experience the highest heaven in this earth itself, in this loka itself, by establishing ourselves in the state of enlightenment. The last verse, which is the well-known Gayatri for Mother Durga. Om Katyayanaya Vidmahe Kanyakumari Dhimahi Tanno Durgif Prachodayat. Katyayanaya, which means of Katyayani. Vidmahe, which means to know. Kanya plus Kumari, which means maiden, virgin. Dhimahi, which means to meditate upon. Tat, which means that. Naha, which means us. Durgihi, which means difficult to reach. Prachodayat, which means to propel from within and enlighten us. So meaning and commentary. May we know Katyayani. We meditate upon the primordial Shakti, upon parsHat. May Durgihi enlighten us. So just as how we have many Gayatris for various aspects of divinity, so here we first recognize Mother Katyayani, we then meditate upon her, and the meditation upon parsHat, upon Mother Durga, will ultimately lead us to enlightenment. What is meditation? To put it really short, the moment of touch and oneness with the divine is the state of meditation. So that concludes the